What's up, Buttercup? Welcome back to my channel. Today's book review is Becoming Madam Secretary, as you can see right here. Great cover by Stephanie Dray. This is 5 perfect stars. And I love the cover. I know a lot of people complain about, oh, historical fiction, it's a time period clothing, woman looking away, and yeah, that's the trend. If you want that to change, then you know, there are some ways to do that, but I think that's kind of irrelevant when we're talking just, you know, about the story. I understand that some book cover trends are annoying. I don't think that the historical fiction trends with the women in period clothing looking away, that's not a horrible trend. I've seen worse cover trends, but I digress. I laughed, I cried, I felt all the feels, and I learned about a fantastic woman forgotten by history. We follow Frances Perkins, aka Miss Perkins, as she likes to be called, an activist and political figure in New York City and DC. This is nearly 600 pages, and we are only following about 20 years of her life and not her full life, which is very extensive and fascinating. This book, if we followed from her childhood up to her death, it would probably be 1,000 pages. So she did a lot of things. Stephanie Dray focuses on the years between about 1910 to 1938, and then the final chapter is in the 60s, and that includes JFK. Kind of a spoiler, but not, because this is history. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're really focused in on her lead up to being the U.S. Secretary of Labor. That is from 1933 to 1945. Yes, it's very extensive. And she's the first woman to hold a cabinet position ever, and she was nominated by FDR. Now, Frances Perkins had a master's in economics and sociology, and she started her career fighting for better working conditions and an end to child labor. After witnessing the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which is in this book and very sad to read, but it's very pivotal for many people, not just her and the families that lost the factory workers that had to jump out of the building because it was on fire and they died. Frances then also advocated for better safety laws in factories. Yes, people had to fight to end child labor and better working conditions in factories and just better working conditions overall. It was, for a long time, you were working 10 to 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And children as young as like 5, 6, 7 were working in factories, and they were losing limbs or their lives for very little pay. And yeah, they were also working, you know, 6 to 7 days a week. So Frances Perkins, over the course of decades, put an end to horrible factory working conditions and child labor. Frances was also an advisor to 2 New York governors, Al Smith and FDR. FDR liked her so much, he hired her for the Secretary of Labor when he became president. She helped him with the New Deal, Civil Conservation Corps jobs program, and Social Security during the Depression. All the while being a mother and taking care of her mentally ill husband, Paul Wilson. In her later years, and in the final chapter, flashback, she becomes a professor at Cornell University, and in the 60s with JFK, she is asked to do a speech for the anniversary of, I think, Social Security or the New Deal. It was one of those big ones that she helped put together for FDR during the Great Depression. And JFK arrived in a surprise hubbubaloo and watched and also spoke during her anniversary speech. So that was interesting to see. Now, Stephanie Dray wrote all these people extremely well. I loved, related, hated, so on and so forth, all of her characters. Stephanie Dray is amazing at the art of historical fiction. She can do no wrong. All of her books are 4 or 5 stars. Actually, like maybe one book is 4 stars, and then all the others are 5. She's fantastic. I'm gonna say that over and over again. Pick up anything Stephanie Dray. I didn't know about Frances Perkins, and I'm so glad to see Stephanie writing about lesser known historical women to shine a light on those who were important to society, whether you agree with their political choices or not. I know a lot of people might not like Frances Perkins and what she helped set up. And I'm not a huge fan of FDR, not necessarily because of like the New Deal and all that stuff, but other things that he did before, during his presidency. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't read about it and learn what happened. If you don't know what happened, then you're just reading clickbait headlines, basically, and forming opinions on clickbait headlines on people, and I don't see how that's helpful for yourself, for the people around you, or honestly the betterment of society. If you don't know about FDR and you just read, you know, a few paragraphs of him and then you form your opinion on a few paragraphs in an article you just stumbled upon, do you really have an opinion? Okay, I mean you do, but it's not informed. So I am really looking forward to learning even more about Frances Perkins, because I want to read more about her. And I think there's a biography on her, I think. And I know, and I'm going to try and find her like biography on FDR, because I'm not a huge fan of him, but I want to see what she saw and what she wrote down during her time in his administration, in both as he was a New York governor and as the president, because she worked with him twice. And I think that's just fascinating all around. She's fascinating. She was a very strong woman. I highly recommend you read Becoming Madam Secretary, and I even think, even if you're not a huge historical fiction fan, like I am, like I grew up reading historical fiction, I just love all the things, I think this is a really important starting point for you to learn about United States history and lesser known, really powerful women that are forgotten, but did a lot of work building what we now know as the United States government. Whether you like it or not, I think you should still learn about it. And this is easy to digest. It's not purple prose or flowery language, and it really doesn't make anyone look grandiose and perfect. No, all of these characters have flaws, and they're not perfect at all. And like I said in the beginning, I hated some, I couldn't relate to some, I loved some of the characters one moment, and then the next chapter I was like, what are you doing? But that's life. I think that's great writing. You're not creating a Mary Sue. You're being very honest. Frances Perkins and FDR and Al Smith, all those people, they have relatives that are living today, and I know how it is hard for a lot of historical fiction writers to write about real life people, especially when it's like the 20th or 21st century. Not really 21st century, that's not historical fiction, of recent centuries, because their living relatives could really push back, and some of them in the past, not with Stephanie, but like I've heard of other historical fiction writers being sued because of their depictions of, you know, historical figures and the living relatives don't like that. Whether that goes to court or not, I don't, but that's really stressful. And so I can see why a lot of historical fiction writers don't want to touch certain historical figures, no matter the country. But Stephanie did a fantastic job. So, of course, I recommend becoming Madam Secretary. Thank you so much for watching my book review, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!